Well, it's that time, man.
Oh, I forgot about this. I thought we were just going to wrap things up. But of course, there's one outstanding thing.
There is the outstanding thing.
The Doodle story. So the Doodle story. So for people who might be new to this podcast, should we bring them up to speed on what the Doodle story is?
Yeah.
So this is a story I don't even remember. I don't even remember.
5.
So I started telling a story about when I first met Tom Cruise. I can't even remember how it came up.
Well, you had told me the story after it happened.
Yes.
And it was a sort of mildly amusing story.
Yeah.
And I think in the course of talking about you having gone on the set of The Force Awakens, the new Star Wars film, you'd been invited there by J.J. Abrams.
Yes.
And that kind of name-droppy Hollywood chat made me think of your Tom Cruise Doodle story. And I said, oh, what was that thing that happened with you and Tom Cruise?
But why did I not tell it all the way through the first time?
Because you just suddenly went all weird and like, oh, I don't think I should tell this story because I'm in the Dream Factory, and when you're in the Dream Factory, you're not supposed to tell tales. Or I don't know what it was, but you refused to tell the whole story.
Right. And anyway, for the last 5 years, I've been drip feeding the story. And the story, can you tell me, let's hear the story from your perspective. What is the story?
Man. The story is, you had been drafted in, you and Edgar Wright, to do some writing on Steven Spielberg's version of Tintin.
Yes.
And you were out in Los Angeles having a meeting with Spielberg.
Yes.
Peter Jackson was either in the room or on a conference call or not involved at all.
Yeah.
Simon Pegg was in the room. Nick Frost was in the room. They were both doing voices.
That's all
in
debatable.
The movie.
Nick being in the room is debatable.
All right, Nick being in the room is debatable.
All these facts are wobbly.
You are scribbling away, doodling on a notepad.
I'm drawing a picture of... I'm going to take the reins. I'm drawing a picture of Snowy, and I haven't completed his front left leg. And Tom Cruise comes in, says hello to everybody, sits down next to me. The conversation's drifting in other directions between Spielberg and co. Tom turns to look at my drawing. I'm drawing Snowy the dog. He says, is that your doodle? I said, yeah. He said, that's a good doodle. I said, thanks, man. And then he picks up the pen and goes, can I doodle? I said, yeah, sure, go ahead. So, but instead of drawing a hoof, he draws, it's as if he suddenly doesn't trust me or where the doodle will go, so he just draws a black square. This is the 6th time a lot of people are hearing this story.
He loses confidence in the hoof.
He loses confidence in the hoof. This is I'm not sure that's what happened, but this is what I imagine.
It's like a Bible story. It's a timeless
it is.
narrative that is handed on from generation to generation.
Yeah, and it's like Chinese whispers. It changes each time. It's exaggerations and embellishments. And he's maybe thinking, man, I have no idea whether this hoof I'm drawing will turn into some massively extended, drip-fed story in a very popular Top 49 podcast. Is probably what he's thinking.
Yeah, I wouldn't want that to happen, he's thinking.
He's thinking no. So instead of drawing a hoof, he just draws a black square, which can be seen on my Instagram page, Mr. Joe Cornish.
There you go.
You can see the actual doodle. And then he holds up the piece of paper and he turns to Spielberg and sort of interrupts him and says, hey, Stephen, I've given Snowy a hoof. And Spielberg turns around and says to him, this is where it ended. Is that as far as it goes? And Spielberg says, oh, that's great, Tom. And that's the end of the story. Adam, hello?
Wait.
Let's move on quickly.
I'm still processing.
You know this story. This is not new to you.
I'd forgotten it. And the thing is that with a punchline like that,
no, but
it's not necessarily going to lodge in the memory for however long it's been. 10 years since I first heard the story.
Listen.
And then 5 years since you've been spinning it out.
Full transparency. The weakness of the punchline is one of the reasons I've been spinning it out. To try and delay the moment.
What kind of emotional turmoil? Did you ever lie awake at night sweating thinking, I'm going to be unmasked at some point. At some point this will end. And then I'm going to be dragged through the streets and dismembered.
No, because luckily something else happened that takes the story into a whole new realm. Which is at the beginning of this year, pre-lockdown, Adam and I were invited to Simon Pegg's 50th birthday party.
on the 14th of February 2020, Valentine's Day, and warning, there is going to be all the name dropping.
And I have to say, like, even before that party had happened, I'd spoken to Simon and said, look, I'm in a bind with this Tom Cruise story. The punchline is very, very weak. And I've stretched it out over 5 years. And last year, people were genuinely angry about it. So get me out of a hole. Get me in. I want Tom to come on the podcast. And I need to discuss it with him. That's the only way out of the hole. Simon said, absolutely fine. Tom will be up for that. We'll arrange it. Come and visit the set of the new Mission Impossible film. Adam can come too. We'll record a brilliant bit. It'll be hilarious. Then the pandemic hits, right? But before the pandemic, we get invited to the party.
Right. So you're setting up stuff I didn't know. I didn't realise that it was a possibility that we might actually record with TC. So, listeners, you must be made aware now that that did not happen. There's not a bit of audio of Tom Cruise talking about the Doodle story that I'm going to unveil at the end of this podcast. Sorry, but no.
It could have happened, but two things happened first. Simon's 50th party happened first, and Adam and I both turned up at Simon's 50th birthday party. And lo and behold, who was there?
Well, I'll tell you who was there before we get to the obvious guest of honour.
Right.
I mean, this is a star-studded party, so as well as members of Simon's friends and family, we are looking at J.J. Abrams, Gillian Anderson, a.k.a. Mrs. Thatcher, Olivia Colman, a.k.a. Laura, the Queen, Bill Bailey, the comedian, Jeremy Dyson, Mark Gatiss from the League of Gentlemen, Chris Martin from Coldplay, Joe Wiley, Radio 1, Radio 2 DJ, Edgar Wright, Henry Cavill, Superman, and co-star of Mission Impossible 5, 6, I don't know. Anyway, you got a Laura stars there, right? But it wasn't definite that Tom Cruise was going to turn up. But we were all saying, like, do you think Tom Cruise will come? Sure enough, fairly early on in the party, the doors open and in comes Tomcat. And I was talking to Joe, facing away from the door, and Joe goes, Tom Cruise. Don't turn around. So I almost immediately turned around. And there he was. And it was quite crazy.
I'm excited for you because I'm always rubbing it in your face that I've met him.
Yes.
And then I thought, this is an amazing moment. Now Adam's going to get to experience what I'm so used to.
I noticed that you didn't immediately go over and say, hey, Tom, nor did he do that with you.
No, that's true.
You were both playing it quite cool.
Well, it was a very busy party.
It was a busy party. Anyway, none of us went over to Tom Cruise because even though Jay Korn had his amazing Doodle story experience with him and may have had other experiences, I don't know, it wasn't appropriate in that moment. And the force field of the sheer celebrity around him was such that you just didn't feel able to pierce it. And it wasn't because he had a big entourage or was putting on airs or anything like that.
Didn't
it was
have
just
any
like
entourage.
No. It was just like, that is Tom Cruise. He's been in
a
lot of films.
But lots of people going up and talking to him. He's not an unapproachable person. He's famous for that. Even at premieres, he's like famous for signing absolutely every single autograph and hanging around with people. I don't think he's unapproachable at all. And in fact, later in the evening, you know, the sort of very drunk person that you get trapped with at a party.
I saw that guy too.
Yeah, well, it was a woman I saw, but several very drunk people were just literally pinning him, not literally pinning him down, but, you know, talking to him in such a way as I felt, oh, should I go and rescue him from that person? Just like you would any person at a party.
I noticed that happening too, but I also noticed that no one was rescuing him. I was thinking, man, that must be a nightmare. And that must be why he doesn't probably go to a lot of parties, I would imagine, if he's got any sense. But he was there for ages. Usually what happens with big stars turning up at a party is they go there, they get their picture taken, and then they're out as quick as possible, in my limited experience of megastar parties. But he was there for a good 3 or 4 hours or something.
But it was a very personal, private friends party, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and
it was.
All these people are genuinely Simon's friends. Right?
That's right.
It's not like the launch party for a new fragrance or something.
No, it was a good scene, good vibe.
It was a proper party with lots of friends, some of whom happened to be famous.
Yeah, and for that reason, I didn't immediately start planning to invade the Tom Sphere.
Well done.
I just thought, oh, well, there he is. Let him enjoy his party. I'm not going to go over and start being a dick.
But later you did.
Well, later on, I was at the bar chatting to Kevin Eldon, and suddenly I feel two hands being laid on my two shoulders, and it is Simon Pegg.
Yes.
And he's saying, come with me.
This is because I said to Simon, hey, Simon, introduce Adam to Tom. You've got to get Adam to speak to Tom. Simon said, okay. And this is what happened.
So he literally manhandled me over, marched me across the room, and I could see Joe and my wife over in the corner watching me and laughing. And I'm thinking, oh, man, here we go. But it was too quick because I wasn't mentally prepared at all, and I hadn't imagined that I would be saying anything to Tom Cruise. And suddenly, within a few seconds, I was standing right in front of him, and he was there with a small group of people that included Edgar Wright was talking to him, and Henry Superman Cavill, and Christopher McQuarrie, who's the director of Mission Impossible 5 and the new movie. And they're just having a little chat, and suddenly Simon has maneuvered me right in front of him. And he says, this is Adam Buxton. I think he said, this is the guy I told you about.
Yes.
They told the story about you doodling on Joe's notepad when we were doing Tintin. And they talked about it on their podcast. And so he sort of set it up in that way. And then I think he buggered off. And suddenly I was just stood right in front of Tom. And Edgar was there. And I could see Edgar. He was looking like, how's this going to go? What's Adam going to say? Is this going to be excruciatingly embarrassing, or is this going to be fine? Anyway, suddenly I'm confronted by Tom Cruise. He's the same height as me, by the way. And I'm looking into his Tom Cruise eyes. And his laser focus is boring right into my brain. And he is doing his special connection tricks with me, double handshake. And he's giving me the megawatt smile, saying, hi, good to meet you. Hi, Adam. Using my name and everything. And I'm on. And it's like, what am I going to say? And I'll tell you over the next 25 years. No, I won't, because I'm not insane. And also, there's no story.
That didn't stop me.
That didn't stop you, but listen, we have to learn from some of our previous historical crimes. And there's no way that I'm spinning this story out, because it's really not that extraordinary. But it was kind of a cool moment because there was so much computation going on in my mind and also in his. And it gave me a chilling insight into what his life must be like moment to moment. Because I could see him trying to calculate, like, what is going on here? Who is this guy that Simon's just suddenly shoved in front of me? And so I started babbling about, like, yes, Joe Cornish, he was working on Tintin, and he apparently was doodling away on a pad. You came over, and so I basically told the story again about, like, the Doodle story. And I could see him sort of, his brow was furrowing a little bit. He was looking at me, looking a bit confused. It was a very faint bit of confusion. And I could see him thinking, like, is this true? Is this guy telling me something true? Or is he taking the piss? Is this a prank? I could see him running through all the possibilities. And then at the end of my thing, I sort of said, do you remember that happening, Tom? And he said, yeah, I remember it really well. And he sort of over-egged it, like, and I knew, like, no, you don't remember it. But he dug in and he said, yeah, sure, I remember it. Yeah. And in a way that didn't invite any further inquiry on that subject.
He was humouring you.
I think he was humouring me, but he was doing it in a very nice way. But at that point, I was just thinking, wow, this is crazy. I'm in his tractor beam, and I'm looking into the eyes of this guy that I've only ever seen on the big screen, whose movies I've enjoyed, who is a strange, confusing figure of pop culture, who, as we speak, is all over the newspapers for losing his temper on the set of Mission Impossible 7, who is a figure of sort of fascination, really, and one of those people who, whether you like him or not, is a pivotal cultural figure. And it's always weird to be in the physical space of one of those people. You know what I mean?
You were starstruck.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
And also, it quickly became obvious that he's quite charming, and his little techniques, or natural charm, whatever you want to think of them as, of making eye contact and not breaking it and using your name a lot and all that stuff, it really works and makes you feel sort of special. So what I did was I thought, okay, I don't really want to spend too much time here because it's too freaky and I don't really have anything to say. But what I do want to do is reassure him that I'm not here to take the piss or try and score points off him or humiliate him or embarrass him, really. So what I did was I started enthusing genuinely about Mission Impossible 5, the Fallout one, with the helicopters and the big fight with Henry Cavill. Fallout, yeah. And I started talking about how great I thought it was, which I really did.
Comfortable territory.
Absolutely terrific.
Yeah.
And I started enthusing about it and describing the scenes and sort of analysing them in a very, listeners, the kind of way that I sometimes do, in a very insightful, articulate way that really makes you think about these things in a way that you might never have done before. And I could see that he liked it and Chris McQuarrie, the director, liked it. And I was saying things like, it was so well directed, Chris McQuarrie, the director.
It's a good
What
insight.
a great job you did, because sometimes with those big fight scenes, the action can get too crazy and hectic. It's hard to tell what's going on. A bad director won't handle those things well, but you just knew exactly what to do to show the audience where they were from moment to moment, and it was so thrilling. You felt like you were there, and I thought I was doing pretty well. What do you reckon?
I think that's you were on very safe ground.
Yeah, I was massively licking their bums.
Yeah, it's a good. I'm disappointed you didn't press him harder about the Doodle story.
I just couldn't, because he didn't remember it, Joe.
Do you think?
Yes, I think.
Do you think?
Remember
Do you think
it.
he possibly didn't remember who I am?
I think there's a chance.
I know Chris McQuarrie knows who I am.
Yeah.
And I think Tom does recognise me, but I'm not sure I'm central to his world.
I'm just saying it's a possibility. You're more central, of course, than I am. You are right close in his orbit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And listen, I know he loves your film. He did a special screening of Attack the Block for his friends.
That's true, yes.
He knows who you are in that respect. But Doodle story-wise, I was getting nothing.
Yeah.
And in the end, one of the things I did, because I suddenly thought like, I've got a genuine question for him, which was, how do you get insurance when you're doing all the stunts and when you clearly injure yourself? There was that thing where he broke his foot. I was like, so I start asking him this question.
Good question.
I was like, how do you, I often think like, how is it logistically possible for you to get insurance for the productions when you are so public about doing your own stunts, and then when you get into a situation where you broke your foot, didn't you, during the production of the last film? And he says, I shattered it. Mm-hmm. So he was right close, really intense, and he's like, no, I didn't break it, I shattered it.
He would be an amazing Blue Peter presenter, don't you think? Him and Rebecca and Henry Cavill doing a big budget Blue Peter film.
Yes.
Don't you think, like abseiling
Tom Cruise
off,
would be Noakes.
He'd be Noakes, Cavill would be Purvis, and Rebecca Ferguson would be
Valerie Singleton.
Cruise would zipline off the top of Tower Bridge and then, like, ruffle a dog's head. People would love it.
I would love it.
I mean, that's sort of what Mission Impossible movies are, really, in some ways. They could do some makes in between the action sequences. Chase around Paris, then show you how to make a fairy castle out of toilet rolls.
Yeah. Anyway, all this bants is probably cold comfort for a sizable proportion of the podcast listenership that are still reeling from the punchline of your 5-year Tom Cruise.
Well, thanks
Doodle
for helping me.
anecdote.
Thanks for helping me out there by taking the reins and
You're welcome.
telling an equally disappointing story about meeting Tom Cruise at a party.
About meeting Tom Cruise. I'm trying to think of what else.
At least you got it over with faster than I did.
My only victory, was it a victory? I don't know what it was. Anyway, to conclude, I was talking to Tom and I felt like I'd made a couple of connections with him. I'd licked his bum quite a lot. I think he liked it. And I said the thing about you broke your foot. I shattered it, he said. And then he told me a little bit more about how intense the fight with Henry Cavill in the urinals was, and how they really hurt each other when they were doing that scene, and they were really punching, and it was great. And then I just thought, I don't think it's going to get better than this. I'm just going to cut out. Yeah. And it's going to be kind of a novelty for him that will probably increase his respect for me and make him want to see me again if I just say, all right, I'm going to go. See you, bye. So I said, hey, listen, Tom, thank you so much. Good to talk to you. Lovely to meet you. Shook his hand. Great to meet you, Adam, he said. And off I went.
That's not what I saw.
What did you see?
I saw you following him around for the rest of the party, desperately trying to talk to him, following him out of the venue, trying to get into his car, being wrestled away from him by the security staff of the venue, then running down the motorway towards London in the rain after his car.
With my pants off.
Throwing homemade CDs of your podcast at him. That's what I saw.
That was Louis Theroux.